Welcome to the Boiling Point. I'm your host, Michael Boyle. Everything we do at All Together Academy is designed to help our community hardwire courage, resilience, contribution, and joy, even if hard times happen. My goal for this podcast is to leave you feeling inspired and empowered with practical, perhaps even profound ideas and tools to make your life a place worth loving. If you'd like to go deeper and explore a complete and traversable path with maps, tools, instructions, camaraderie, and support all in one place, you can join the Joyful Excellence Mastermind community, where for a fraction of the cost of typical therapy, you can get so much more. Or you can sign up for our free newsletter, check out our blogs and books, take the 30-day reset from surviving to thriving, all by visiting the All Together Academy website. Please enjoy this free episode and reach out with any questions or requests for me to speak on certain topics here or to an audience near you. Love to all. Together we thrive.
Wake the lion in the lair. Set the bird free from the cage.
Welcome once again. Thank you. This is the second episode of The Boiling Point, and keeping to my commitment to try to get one of these out per week, I am coming to you live with a hoarse voice and a winter cold, the fifth in a set of dominoes, family dominoes, that has fallen ill. And so I'm here anyway, and I love to be here. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to hear all the positive feedback that I'm getting about the podcast. That's super exciting. Thank you so much. And one of the other things that I'm going to be doing, I said it last week that this is a minimally viable product podcast, meaning we are just getting it started and we have lots to learn about sound quality and things like that. But also one of the things is that I'm choosing at this point to not use scripts, and I'm going to speak spontaneously on certain topics. I certainly have a direction about where I think I want to go. But the reason why I'm doing this is because, one, I think it will feel more authentic and you will really get a sense for who I am and the work that I do. And two, because it's frankly more fun. And part of what I'm putting out there is that we are in the pursuit of joyful excellence by design. And by following our joy and by doing what we love, this is not stuff that you haven't heard before, but hey, there's a reason why you've heard it before. It's really what works. So I'm going to have fun. I'm going to speak off the cuff. That means there might be some hiccups here and there. And I don't even think I'm going to edit that stuff out too much. So, but we'll see. No promises. Like I said last week, we will always continue to make improvements. So today I want to share with you a little exercise that I've been playing with. And this comes from the category of work that I would call energy of mind, secular spiritual work for practical people. And it's a simple little exercise, but it's really fun. And it goes like this. So just consider something that brings you joy, just something that makes you smile, and just take a minute to see what arises. You know, what is really joyful in my life, or what brings me a sense of happiness, or and then notice whatever images and sensations arise in your body, and maybe you're thinking about a child or a pet or a beautiful sunset, or maybe even as I say those things, those images are flashing in your mind, and just see what you come to that brings a smile to your face. And if you don't already have a smile on your face, guess what? You can help it out by smiling. And as you smile, just see what that feels like in your whole body. What would it be like if your whole body smiled? And now, as you're smiling, and I don't want this to be too long of an exercise. In fact, this setup is already longer than it has to be in practice when you're doing it on the go. But just whatever brings you joy, I want you to imagine like it rises up through your body and up above your body like a mist. And it goes up and up and up and up and up and up and up some more and up some more again. And then it gathers in a cloud that is just beyond your imagination. So just pose that. Just pose that to yourself. What would it be like if my smile energy, if the smile and the joy and the gratitude just rises up out of my body and up, 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 and up some more and up just beyond your imagination, and it gathers in a cloud there. And then just pose a curiosity. I wonder when it's going to rain. I wonder when it's going to rain. Return back into your body sensations and that smile and just go about your day. That's it. And just set it and forget it. And play with it and look out for being surprised by joy in some future moments. And then you can mist those back up, and then you will experience a rain of blessings coming from the unknown in some future moments, and you can continue this reciprocal relationship of allowing the sensations of joy and love and gratitude to mist up beyond your imagination into the unknown, and you will find them raining down into your life when you least expect it, which is so wonderful. So that's what the first thing that I wanted to do. And then the next thing I wanted to talk about is I want to talk about reverse engineering. Reverse engineering goes a little bit like this. You're going to hear me click, maybe because I'm gonna look at it, a document here. So reverse engineering. Okay, so let me share an example. Last year, when I was writing the book that's about to come out, I was still really, really struggling with some health challenges, and it's so easy when we're struggling with something like that to feel like we are at effect, and so that my joy, my happiness, my love, I felt like it was held hostage by the circumstances, and I was not able to access it. Because I was dizzy and I was nauseous and I was tired and I was having headaches and all sorts of things. So I decided to reverse engineer it. And so I was meditating one day, and I was get quiet in my body and quiet in my mind, and just opening up and opening up and opening up. And then I into that open space of consciousness, I asked questions. And good questions are like seeds, and seeds are going to sprout if they're put in proper soil. And my job as someone who is working with life to create the best possible outcomes, my job is not to make the seed turn into a flower. That's nature's job. My job is to plant the seed in fertile soil and give it water and pull weeds and give it the right amount of light and sunshine and create the conditions where that seed is most likely to thrive. So planting the seed in fertile soil means planting it into the unknown. It means planting it into an open mind and an open heart, and being curious and getting quiet and being in a resourceful state of being, because that is the fertile soil in which the seed will sprout. So I do this and I say, well, what would it be like? Reverse engineering. What would it be like if I were already happy? What would it be like if I were already happy? And sometimes our consciousness will give rise to something that surprises us. And this happened to me. This surprised me. Is like there was just a knowing. It was almost not necessarily verbal, but there was maybe some verbal kind of sentence structure to it. But it was more like a pithy like dance. And there was a knowing that if I were happy, I would dance more. And that was really surprising to me, because I got to be honest, like I don't identify as a dancer. In fact, the opposite. I have always identified as not a good dancer, as kind of like typical white guy in that sense, and and maybe insecure about dancing and feeling awkward in social situations where dancing would happen, and really just not identifying as a dancer at all. And so I was surprised if I were already happy, I would be dancing more. And so when I say reverse engineering, it's one thing to just plant that seed, but how do I cultivate that result up front? How do I put the ends up front and up first in my life? Is I don't just wait. We're either waiting or creating. I don't just wait for one day to all of a sudden be a good dancer or to be willing to go dancing. I start, but I start with what I'm willing to do. And this is, you're going to hear me talk about this a lot. It's called the grace and ease question. And I have whole, chapter in the book about this, but I'll just touch on it for right now. And the grace and ease question is what's the next easiest thing that I'm willing to do? So if my consciousness, if my spirit is telling me dancing more is a flower on the fruit tree of me being happy, well then I want to start expressing that value and that virtue right away. But I'm not going to go all the way to, Dancing with the Stars. I'm going to start with what's the next easiest thing that I'm willing to do. And because I was insecure and didn't feel like a good dancer, well then what I was willing to do when I asked inside, well, what's the next easiest thing that I'm willing to do? I'm willing to put on headphones and dance in my room when no one's looking. I even lock the door. and so as I started doing that, like that, that started to feel nice, and that actually felt really good. And then I started kind of, realizing, okay, well, I can do that while I'm doing the dishes, and I'm gonna put on some music and I'm gonna dance around the kitchen, and maybe I'm gonna do that more when no one else is around, because I'm still like not so sure of this thing about dancing in front of other people. And then that evolved next, what's the next easiest thing I'm willing to do, because that felt good. And when we change better by feeling better, we change, most people think that we need to whip ourselves into shape or beat ourselves up into change, but actually we change better by feeling better. And so when I started feeling good about dancing in my room, and I started feeling good about dancing while doing the dishes, then I started also being like, oh, I wonder what else, what's the next easiest thing that I'm willing to do? Oh, I'm going to start doing some dance for exercise and start working out in the living room to dance videos. And I'm going to be in a public space where maybe my family will see me, maybe they won't. I still have this irrational insecurity about that. My family are welcoming, accepting people. They're certainly, used to dad being a little bit weird. So they're probably not going to be too surprised, actually, that I'm dancing in public. But for me, it felt like a challenge. It felt like something that I needed to overcome. And so I started doing that. And then as that started to feel really good, and then I started to notice that my kids started to notice, like, hey, that's actually cool. So far from judge me, they actually were like, hey, dad's like moving. He looks good. He's feeling good. Like, I'm so happy for him. And so then what was the next? So then it got it. So I'll fast forward to it getting to the point where I was willing to ask my wife if she wanted to go out salsa dancing. Now, a little bit of backstory here is that my wife is a Latino woman, and she's been in a bands her whole life. She's a professional musician. She's played in cumbia bands. She's been dancing her whole entire life. And we, at the time of this story, are in Mexico. And so I'm in a culture where people just dance, and there is actually no stigma or shame around men dancing. In fact, men dancing is considered very very attractive and sexy and powerful, and so there's none of this thing like I grew up with, which is like dancing is lame or for wussies or whatever, all the unfortunate connotations with homosexuality and homosexuality being bad and all that kind of crap that kind of I grew up with. And so that certainly fed into my identity as like not liking dancing, quote unquote. And so I asked her to dance, and I still wasn't, by maybe some external objective measures a great dancer, but the point is that I also was able to redefine, well, what does a good dancer really mean? A good dancer means that I'm having fun and that I'm enjoying myself. And so so we went out dancing, salsa dancing, and we had an absolute blast. And yeah, maybe I was, awkward with some of the steps, and maybe, we had a hard time finding our timing, but we had a total blast. And what I realized is that, hey, I already was happy. I was already joyful, and I reverse engineered it. I didn't wait to be happy when I was feeling better, when my illness was better. I created the conditions that when I asked into my unknown, I created the conditions that my consciousness said would be the case if I was already happy. By building it bit by bit, step by step, by doing the next easiest thing that I was willing to do in that direction, I found myself happy on the inside out, and therefore able to enjoy dancing, whether I was a quote-unquote good dancer or not, in an environment where I would normally be really insecure. And also, that ends up being a win. It was a win for my wife, because this is something that my wife really wished that she could do with me, and we had a total blast and went on a wonderful date, and then it was a win for my kids, because they're seeing their dad dancing and healthy and thriving and moving in the right direction in terms of their concerns for me and my health challenges and stuff like that. So, we start to create the circumstances, and I couldn't go all the way, maybe that if I didn't have that couple month build up to that salsa dancing, maybe I would have been too dizzy and too nauseous, but I built it bit by bit. Or maybe I would have been too insecure, but I built it bit by bit. So it's both a kind of a gritty and courageous approach, but it's also a kind and gentle approach that says, what's the next easiest thing that I'm willing to do? Okay? And so that reminds me, that comes to the next thing that I wanted to talk about, which is the title of this podcast, Death to Who You Were. Ooh, sounds spooky and sounds scary, and maybe not, but so death to who you were is the level of work that the people that are in the Joyful Excellence Mastermind, so people in GEM, please listen up. This is the level of work that you have consented to. You have consented to playing the game at this level of what I'm about to explain here. And I want to put a caveat here that this scares me a little bit to talk about this level of work, because out in the cultural trance, we are a little bit stuck over validating our wound story in such a way that it keeps us dysfunctional. And to speak about what I'm about to speak about does maybe raise the eyebrows of cancel culture. And yet I'm at a point in my life and my career where I think I'm pretty confident with what works. And I've been in the trenches of community mental health. I've worked with severe mental illness. I've worked with trauma. I've worked with substance abuse. I've worked with child protective services. I've been in the trenches. And if I look around at the landscape of mental health in our culture, even though more and more people are in therapy, and even though therapy is less and less stigmatized, both positive things, it's not getting better. I actually would make a venture to say that it seems to be that it's getting worse. And so something about our approach isn't working. And one of the things that I think isn't working is that we are getting stuck. We have swung the pendulum. The pendulum, I grew up again with suck it up, you're fine, it doesn't exist, pretend it doesn't hurt, move on, whatever. And that was toxic to an extreme. But now we've swung the pendulum to staying stuck on our wound story, or on our, I hesitate to even use this word, but I'm going to explain it, our victim story. Because there's got to be a middle ground. Now, I am not talking about the gaslighting and denial and victim blaming that happens sometimes in New Age spirituality, or in toxic culture that doesn't understand generational trauma or being trauma informed. But there is a version of that is actually, in my opinion, keeping people disempowered. And one of the things that's been brought up to me a lot lately is people are telling me, a lot about, now the new thing that everyone is kind of blaming for, teenagers' mental health issues is how hard COVID was. And I'm not saying COVID wasn't hard. It was hard. But I'm saying, if we are now assigning blame to something in the past, and that past is now causing us to not be happy. Now my happiness, my joy, my love, my creativity is held hostage by something in the past that I cannot change. And that sets up a dynamic of being stuck. And so I'm not talking about denying that COVID was hard. I'm not talking about gaslighting or pretending that it wasn't, or shaming a person for whatever struggles that have arisen from the difficulties in their life, that were things that have happened to them that are very legitimate, that have happened, that are outside of their control. I am saying that in order to be able to thrive, we need to be willing, even if we have been a legitimate victim, we need to be willing and able to move beyond victim stance. And that's a difference. Absolute empathy and compassion for being a victim of difficult circumstances, not condoning, not justifying, certainly preventing them whenever possible, avoiding them in the future whenever possible, holding people responsible that have done wrong, all that. And precisely because COVID was hard, even though COVID was hard, aside from the fact that COVID was hard, especially because COVID was hard and I no longer want to be at the influence of COVID, I value and choose to reverse engineer it, to create this or create that. I value and choose to let my past be past and look to the future and create the future that I value and choose. And so it's a gutsy approach, it's a gritty approach, it's a courageous approach, but it's also a very kind approach. People think that and people that are too attached to their wound story, oh, you're not validating how hard it was, and you're not, I actually think that is a less kind approach, because it's not kind to allow yourself or loved ones to linger in a state of suffering. And as long as you are saying, COVID made me this way, and then staying the way COVID made me, now COVID is in charge of you, and now you are at effect of COVID, and if COVID made me this way, then the only way that I get better is if COVID changed. And guess what? COVID isn't the past, the past isolation that we all felt during COVID, that can't change. So now you have set up kind of an algorithm where you are stuck, and it's impossible to feel better, because if COVID makes me depressed, if COVID made me depressed, then now, but COVID is something, the past COVID experience can't change, then now I'm stuck. But if I take responsibility back for how I think and how I feel and how I act, for my state of being, because it's my state of being, it's my body, it's my mind, it's my emotions, it's my breath, it's my posture, it's my smile, it's my joy, it's my love, it's my activities, it's my behaviors. Oh. So, all right, I'm gonna roll with it, okay? That's my wife's song coming in from the last podcast, and I didn't move it when I was re-recording this one. That's supposed to be the outro. So, but what she's saying here is wake up and choose love, because even if the past was hard, aside from the fact that the past was hard, especially because the past was hard, even if, aside from and especially because, I don't want more of that. So it is up to me to be response-able instead of reactive. Break down the words. React is to react the same conditions over and over and over again. So if I got depressed during COVID and COVID makes me depressed, and now I am reacting the same neurochemistry that I felt during COVID, now I am stuck reacting over and over and over again. But if I am responsible, I am able to respond and say, yeah, wow, that did suck, and I don't want any more of that. So now, how can I reverse engineer it? What would it be like if I were truly happy? What would it be like if I were truly in love? What would it be like if I loved life? And then what's the next easiest thing that I'm willing to do? And I thought that I was going to get to the death to who you were. Maybe I will. So in Energy of Mind, this is going to go a little bit longer. Okay, great. So in Energy of Mind, secular spiritual work for practical people, I have hesitated up until this point to share this level of work with people because I am really, really insistent on not sharing anything that I don't feel like I've already accomplished. And, I mentioned last week how I felt like an imposter in certain ways, with the hole in my bucket and all that. Check it out if you haven't listened to it, episode 1, How to Find Joy, even if you have a hole in your bucket. But also, it was not until the deepest, darkest moment after the surgery that I talked about where I discovered beyond a shadow of a doubt, in a non-intellectual way, in a way that was kind of like profound, maybe in a way that is similar to what you hear people talking about, ayahuasca and stuff like that, but a really profound spiritual experience. And by the way, this is Sans drugs, which has been a choice of mine because I'm stubborn and I insist on proving to myself my belief that everything is available inside my own consciousness without any aids or assistance. And so discovering the profundity of joy that is beyond circumstances, of recognizing that the things that I've read in all the spiritual books and texts and things like that of recognizing it for myself in my direct experience, that joy is beyond circumstances and can be discovered inclusive of difficult circumstances. Not taking away the circumstances, not smearing icing on a shit cake, but actually while hosting the difficult circumstances, while in one of the most painful, dark moments of my life, or, extended over days, being able to access absolute, unconditional joy. That gives me the confidence now to also bring out this fourth limb of the work that I do. I have the way of personal presence, which is the kind of the individual level work that some kind of relates a little bit to psychology, but I believe is kind of a more holistic perspective than typical therapy. And then I have the way of relating, which is like the couples work and the family life excellence work. And then there's the way of metabolism, which is the trauma work. And then there's the way of wonder, energy of mind, secular spiritual work for practical people. And here, at this level of work, we are much more excited with the question, is this experience, thought, or memory, or emotion, or useful or not useful, rather than is it true or not true? Because when we have discovered that our core values arise from within and can be expressed regardless of past or arising conditions, we may realize that this is the only game in town worth playing. And dying to who and what I was, which you can read about in the book as the reactive I was, and giving birth to who I really am, which you will read about in the book as The Creative I Am. And there's a process for this whole dying and rebirthing that I'm talking about. So from an example, for my taste, the supreme virtue of all is loving. So my practice is to celebrate the death of everything in me that is not yet all loving. Many people talk about and understand the concept of unconditional love, but to understand, think, feel, act, become, and be all loving is the work of a lifetime. This is going from caterpillar to butterfly. So instead of trying to paste wings on a caterpillar and hope it will fly, this is dying to who you were, anything that is not loving, and becoming all loving, which is becoming a butterfly. And of course, practically speaking, the nervous system must feel safe enough to do this. It must feel safe enough to open the heart. So we do start with validation, acceptance, kindness, empathy, trauma-informed, etc., because you can't go beyond the limitations of the self until the self feels really strong and safe and healthy. So cleaning up whatever is required for your body and brain, not just your intellect, to feel completely safe is both required and a huge chunk of progress along the way. And this is a felt neurobiological state, not an intellectual knowing. And it is available independent of circumstances. So the people in GEM, listen up. This is available independent of circumstances. Over and over and over again, we must master the knowledge by becoming the knowledge. You cannot create a new personal reality as the same old personality. And your personality is comprised of the preponderance of how you think, feel, and act. So to become someone new, you must think, feel, and act newly, even if, aside from, and especially when, you are triggered by the same stimulus that used to make you, air quotes, angry, anxious, or depressed. To truly change, to truly embody new circumstances, you need to die to who you were, even if who you were is a justified reaction to what has happened or is happening. We are talking about the biological, chemical, and even epigenetic death of your old self. And the charnel grounds where your old self goes to die is the holy ground of the present moment, where the past cannot enter unless it's allowed, unless it's invited and beckoned, and the future does not yet exist. In the present moment, which is actually new, always, we must think, feel, and act newly in ways that are greater than the ways we are compelled to react like we always have, because that's just the way I am, or that's how I should react to something like COVID. Okay? So, I think that that's enough for now. And I thank you for listening. I welcome your questions and your observations. And remember that smile exercise. Feel what it feels like to smile. And remember, that's your body. It's your mind. You are allowed to conjure up the images and the sensations that feed you and that nourish you. And then you can radiate them up into the unknown and then I wonder what it will be like when it rains. Okay. May it rain blessings and love and joy into your life spontaneously for no reason. And may you help to precipitate that. Love to all. Together we thrive. Ciao.